Bowerman was quite literally open to any idea to improve his shoes. He once made a pair of track shoes out of carp he caught in the Mackenzie River.
Put that coffee down.
Creators are leaders. Be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here.
Helen, we're both in sales.
Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't.
I'm not leaving. The show goes on.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome back to the Construction Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Bradley Hartmann. Well, this week, friends, we are officially opening up registration to our third cohort to the OSR Academy, our Outside Sales Rep Academy, to help develop this next generation of leaders who do not annoy the hell out of those who are doing the work of buying or building or both. It's 12 months, online, offline. We are bringing in the best sales trainers that we know of, and we are bringing in building professionals, executives who handle the buying decisions, and they are telling our students exactly what they do and do not like and what they recommend to make them more valuable to their businesses. For any of you that have attended or have thought about attending our 2-day Sales Fundamentals Workshop that is held every April in Fort Worth, that is included. We are capping registration at 35 students, and we already know about half of those are already booked from companies that have invested in cohort 1 or cohort 2. So if you are interested in learning more, go to osracademy.com, or you can email our team directly at info@bradleyhartmanandco.com. Now, today's episode is going to focus on something that will help everyone. It's about leadership. It's about persuasion. It's about telling a better story. It's about building a better business case to change behaviors. And would this be helpful for people who sell in the construction industry for a living? Yes. Would it also be helpful for everybody else in the construction industry? Yes. So I'm excited to share this entertaining, powerful, and memorable story that really ties in this methodology about how we can all be more persuasive as we strive to help those around us reach their potential. And like all our episodes this week and last, we are giving something away to help you become a better leader that is relevant to the episode. So stay tuned for the opportunity to get a free download on the idea of dollarization. That is a big idea in only a few short words that has absolutely changed my life. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode that is titled Persuading Prefontaine, how you can leverage the persuasion principle behind the greatest track coach of all time. Strip away the leadership cliches. Scroll past the Instagram quotes from the eminent dead. Sun Tzu, Marcus Aurelius, Kobe Bryant, whatever. Ignore them all. Your success as a leader stems from your ability to help others reach their potential. And to do so, you must persuade others to do what you want them to do. The manager or leader or parent who says, fine, I admit it. Everybody ignores what I tell them to do, is the manager or leader without a job. As for the parent, well, this won't guarantee divorce, but I can tell you it won't make them easier to love. Now, brute force and fear are two instinctual options for any leader. However, history demonstrates while those can work, they're poor long-term strategies. Constructing a far more persuasive argument rests on the foundation of personal self-interest. To illustrate such leadership, let's dissect a story from a track coach in the 1970s. Now, if you can imagine a track and field version of Vince Lombardi, who tinkered in his garage like James Dyson, you've got the basic outline of Bill Bowerman. Bowerman coached at the University of Oregon for 24 years. The Ducks posted a record of 114 wins and only 20 losses. They went undefeated 10 times. Bowerman developed 33 Olympians, 38 conference champions, and 64 All-Americans. Off the track, he was a mad scientist, experimenting on everything from more shock-absorbing asphalt running surfaces to the shoes that ran on them. He famously destroyed his wife's waffle iron, at least 3 different ones, she said, as he tested various polymer batters for improved soles. Bowerman snagged a surplus Army bomber camera and filmed his athletes' strides, inevitably finding inefficiencies that resulted in faster times. He was the first to pad the hurdles to reduce injury, and was the first to swap sawdust for foam in the high jump pits. His attempt to create a performance-enhancing beverage like Gatorade was effective in every regard except for taste. It tastes like sheep's urine, he said. But of all the innovations, it was Bowerman's cobbling that made the biggest impact. He whittled his own shoe lasts. These are these mechanical things that are shaped like a foot that then are used to build the shoe around or repair shoes. Well, he whittled these himself in his garage, and he did this in his pursuit of perfection. The perfect shoe was the one that was so light, it would go the entire distance and then self-destruct, he said, at the tape, slowing his runners by not 1 ounce. Bowerman was quite literally open to any idea to improve his shoes. He once made a pair of track shoes out of carp he caught in the Mackenzie River. Eventually, though, he landed on a nylon mesh. These shoes weighed 4 ounces, 50% less than the Adidas racing spikes he'd been buying for his team. The only problem was, his top runner wouldn't wear them. In episode 299 of this Construction Leadership podcast, this one you're listening to right now, we had Tom Asacker on the show, and he detailed the simple construct that guides human behavior: desires, beliefs, behaviors. And people generally find it easy to state what they desire. And observing what people do, their behaviors, well, that's easy enough as well. It's the beliefs, Asacker says, that leaders often breeze over. Leaders jump directly from desires to behaviors, failing to excavate and examine underlying beliefs. What do you want to accomplish? All right, then, just do this. If you've ever thought something like this, what? That's what you want to achieve? All right, just do this. You will have skipped directly over the beliefs. You went from desires, what do you want, to behaviors, then do this, without exploring the beliefs. Skip over the underlying beliefs and you won't change behavior. Now, if this sounds obvious to you, why don't more leaders do it? The short answer is this: humans, we're tricky. We say we believe one thing, and then we go and do the opposite. And we hoover up new beliefs from those around us without a second thought. We don't take the time to think about our thinking. So how can you more effectively link desires, beliefs, and behaviors? The answer lies in quantifying the opportunity to gain or lose and linking it directly to the other person's self-interest. His name was Steve Prefontaine, the cocky running phenom everyone called Pre, and he was just as stubborn as his coach. "Not wearing them, coach," Pre said. "Your art project fish shoe falls apart and a spike goes through my foot. I'm out for 2 months." "They won't fall apart," Bowerman said. "I don't know that," said Pre. "I do," the coach said. "Fine then, coach. You wear them. I'm not." Bowerman glared at his running prodigy. Pre flashed an unconvincing smile. The coach, though, he had planned for this. His backup plan featured 4th grade math, props, and an appeal to Pre's personal self-interest, intellect, and desire for greatness. Bowerman first nodded at his assistant. The young assistant coach stepped toward Pre with his hands behind his back. Pre looked at the coach, then back at Bowerman. Another Bowerman mind game, Pre thought. "Pre, how many strides do you take in the mile?" 880, coach. "And what's your goal this year?" 3 minutes, 58 seconds flat. "And your personal best so far?" 404, coach. "So in percentage terms, Pre, how far away are you from your goal then?" 2.5%, coach. Okay, said Bowerman as he transitioned to phase 2 of his plan to persuade Pre to do what Bowerman wanted him to do, achieve his potential. And how much do you weigh? Pre rolled his eyes. 152 pounds, coach. Now, theoretically, Pre, do you believe that if you could lose 10 pounds, run 4 laps around this track carrying 10 fewer pounds without losing any strength, well, you think you could break the 4-minute mark? In theory, sure, coach. Less weight with the same strength would make me faster, Pre said, before making bunny ears with his 2 hands as air quotes. But coach, I don't run in theory. Of course, said Bowerman, glancing at his assistant and then back at his runner. Pre, how many ounces in a pound? Pre shrugged and looked at his teammates. The 4th guess from the team was the correct one. There it is, 16 ounces in a pound, Bowerman said, peering at his men of Oregon one by one. Each and every one of you, I want you to think about this. Pre strides 880 times in the mile, so every ounce saved in his shoes equal 880 ounces saved over the course of the race. Bowerman turned to his assistant. His hands remained behind his back. Coach D, Bowerman said, help him with the math. What's 880 strides divided by 16 ounces? Coach, that's 55 pounds saved for every 1 ounce removed over the course of Pre's mile. Thank you. And how much lighter are these shoes? This pair right here that will not fall apart compared to Pre's Adidas? 2 ounces, coach. Bowerman then pointed at his assistant. So that's 110 pounds, Bowerman said as his gaze narrowed to Pre. Can you imagine, Pre, what all that extra weight looks like? Can you imagine what it feels like? Pre jumped back, startled, as Coach D dropped a pair of gray, weathered, 55-pound kettlebells right at Pre's feet. Pick 'em up, Bowerman demanded. Pre's wiry shoulders shuddered as he stood upright with the weight. You feel that? That's all the extra weight you're carrying around. Might not feel like it, but you are. Now drop 'em and put these shoes on. Pre did as he was told. 10 days later, wearing his coach's shoes, Pre ran a sub 4-minute mile for the first time. 2 months later, he posted his personal best, 3 minutes, 58 seconds flat. Now, your success as a leader stems from your ability to help others reach their potential. That's it. And to do so, it means you must persuade others to do what you want them to do. This requires changing people's minds, something that doesn't come naturally to us humans. It's far simpler to continue doing what we've always done, to let inertia do its thing. Now, to be persuasive, to help coach others to improve and reach their potential, you can follow Bowerman's lead. Bowerman started by focusing on Steve Prefontaine's desires and personal self-interest. What did Pre want? Well, he wanted to run a sub 4-minute mile. He wanted to become an NCAA champion. He wanted to make the Olympics. But what about the beliefs? The coach understood Pre's beliefs about his shoes. Pre believed Adidas made the best shoes, while the coach's shoes could injure him. Pre also didn't believe an ounce or two made one bit of difference on the track. Bowerman then engaged Pre's desires and his beliefs to change his behavior by quantifying the opportunity. 55 pounds times 2, it's 110 pounds. And then he enabled Pre to feel the actual weight limiting his potential. Bowerman showed Pre, he didn't simply tell him. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Bradley, that's a great story and all about Bill Bowerman and Steve Prefontaine, but how is that relevant to me? How is it relevant to our industry? So I will give you a couple examples here relevant to what we do. The first one involves GAF. You know GAF, Red Square, 3 letters, North America's largest roofing manufacturer, etc. So several decades ago, GAF had an expiring patent. It was for a solvent that they had invented. And instead of having it simply become a commodity because the patent had outlived its life, they decided to really zero in on specific market sectors. So the first thing they did, they really invested in learning about these customers in each one of these niches. They observed them, they talked to them, they really understand what they wanted, they understood their beliefs, and then they understood their behaviors about what they actually did. So I know many of you are into fishing and into boats. So one of them was called ShipShape. It was a resin cleaner, and it was a product for cleaning cured fiberglass in the boat building industry. So they started to really evaluate who are they actually competing against now that they have this new product aimed at this very specific niche. And the answer was acetone. It was a cheap solvent that evaporated quickly and produced tons of emissions-laden with VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Now, as you may or may not have experienced, I certainly have, I've come to the realization multiple times throughout my career that most people, while they respect the environment, they care about the environment, they say they really want to have a healthy Mother Earth, they are not willing to pay extra to make sure it is environmentally safe. So GAF quickly had to discard that. While the argument was true, it was not persuasive. Why? Because people didn't really believe it was worth it to them to pay more to help save the environment from VOCs. However, people did have an intuitive sense of value. So what GAF learned from a customer complaint who was using acetone is that acetone evaporates very quickly. And how much more quickly does it evaporate compared to their product? They did the math. They did the experiment, and it was 17 times. So what did they do? When they went to trade shows, in all their marketing, they showed one bucket of their ShipShape resin cleaner, and then they showed, or literally carried around, 17 empty 5-gallon buckets of acetone. They would literally bring 17 empty buckets to the dock and say, there, that's what this one bucket can do. And yes, it costs 30% more. There is a price premium. But do you want to lug around 17 of those or just one of this? And the answer was obvious. All right, that's an example about boats. What about one specific to construction? In the mid-'80s, a company produced the first flexible gas pipe for construction. They called it the Sidewinder, and when approaching people who built, they talked about accelerated construction schedules, reduced labor costs, and it allowed them to add high-profit upgrades like gas fireplaces and such at a much lower cost. So it was all about speed. So when approaching builders, they would say, if time is money, the Sidewinder is pure gold. Now that makes sense. And as someone who used to be a buyer for a builder, I can say this sort of approach would absolutely resonate with me. And somebody walking through how many homes we do, how many times was this option selected, how many turns do we generally have if we're looking at the MEP layout for gas, and how might we be able to collectively approach the plumber and say, hey, I think we can take cost out of this while improving the profitability for all three of us. However, let's talk about the plumber. When a new innovation comes like this and it can speed the process and plumbers price by the hour, what happens? Yeah, they're not going to be too thrilled with it. So as people were trying to be more persuasive and they were thinking about plumbers' desires and their beliefs and their behaviors, they had to combine all of these. So what did they do? Well, they pivoted. So instead of talking about how to reduce their hourly rate, they went to job sites and counted how many times there's a black iron pipe that required a threaded joint at every single turn. And they highlighted that a certain percentage of these would leak. Now a leak, that was somewhat common. And what would that necessitate? A plumber would have to go back on their own dime, not to get paid for it, and then go hunt down the leak, get a little soap, try to figure out where the leak was and solve the problem. It was money lost every single week of every single year. They also focused on the weight differential. The Sidewinder was 75% less in weight compared to black iron pipe. So they demonstrated, working with the plumber, they could go from 2-man crews down to 1-man crews. Now, these two examples come from the book, The Dollarization Discipline by Jeffrey Cox and Richard Gregory, which I would strongly recommend to a friend. I share these with you to show how we can really start to think about the desires of a group of people or an individual but to really zero in on these beliefs before we try to change the behaviors. And there's no reason you can't follow this path as well. For example, say you've got a headstrong and talented young sales pro. You can understand his desires and personal self-interest. He wants to be the top salesperson in the company, and he wants to pay cash for the 2024 Ranger Z520R fishing boat. Don't we all? And he also wants to work less, knowing 90-hour weeks, they're not going to fly after his October wedding. So what's holding him back? His beliefs. He believes sales forecasting is silly because the future is inherently unknowable. He attributes his sales success over the last 2 years solely to his brilliance, not the strong economy, nor his unerring operations team. So you can start by evaluating his calendar over the last month to show he's already reached a ceiling of complexity. How his dream of earning $250,000 is impossible given his current habits. Paying cash for that boat? It's a pipe dream. So to quantify the opportunity for this young man, you can take a different tack on time. Share a simple line graph revealing how his sales have plateaued. Then jump over to a bar graph known as a power curve that highlights how 91% of his sales come from 4 builders. The good news is he can begin to solve this with a proactive prioritization through a sales pipeline requiring only 30 minutes each month. It's a habit that can change his life. And if you want to go a step further, you can narrow his focus internally. Remind him he's not even in the top 3 within his own company. And then expand his purview externally. Inform him a competitor just down the road has a sales rep who sells 5 times his revenue. Yes, he needs to opt in, but you need to help him see the value. To challenge your team to reach their potential, you need a better argument, a more persuasive business case. The eminent dead, Sun Tzu, Marcus Aurelius, Kobe Bryant, whoever, they don't have anything on you. They won't help your team reach their potential. Only you can. So appeal to their enlightened self-interest. Deeply understand their beliefs. Listen. Show, don't tell, and then quantify the opportunity. Then step back and let your team run. So a quick coda to the story. Yes, that Bill Bowerman, if that name rings a bell, he was the co-founder with Phil Knight. How did Phil Knight meet Bill Bowerman? That's right. He ran track at the University of Oregon. And that story, which is overall largely very true, the dialogue was somewhat fictionalized, came from the book called Swoosh by Beckland and Strasser. If you're looking for a 700-page history of Nike that gets paired real well with the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, you will enjoy that. It's a lot, but if you're a super nerd about Nike like I am, it was pretty great. Now, when we talk about this idea of quantifying the pain or quantifying the opportunity, doing some basic math to help people truly understand what is hard for people to imagine, which is this idea of opportunity cost. If you weren't wasting your time going back for rework over here, what could you be doing? So not only are you losing money over here on the left, on the right, you could be making money. So how can we help you just understand the overall impact of your behavior or your lack of behavior as we attempt to change people? There are 2 books that I would strongly recommend to a friend. The first is the one I mentioned earlier, The Dollarization Discipline by Jeffrey Cox and Richard Gregory. And the second one is Dollarizing Differentiation Value, which is a mouthful. It's a good book, not a great title, by Dr. Stephen Leosu, which I cannot imagine for a second I'm not pronouncing that right. Both those books are well worth $15 or $20, and they are great in tandem. Now that you've made it this far, if you are interested in getting a small PDF that talks about the dollarization principle, this was given to me by my mentor, someone named Rich Horwath, who's been on the show. When I launched my company in 2011, I asked him what I should be reading. And he said, I'm going to send you something. It's a PDF. If you study this and you apply it, you will be more effective. And he was 100% right. And I still revisit it today. And it is unbelievably short. If you are interested in seeing that with my notes still on it, I would love to share it because I believe it will have a big impact on you. You can simply email us at info@bradleyhartmanandco.com. info@bradleyhartmanandco.com. There's 2 N's in Hartman. So info@bradleyhartmanandco.com. Or you can go to our website. Now, this little nugget, this little PDF is included in the OSR Academy, and quantifying the pain and quantifying the opportunity is something that we talk about in every single term of the OSR Academy. Why? Because when salespeople did that to me and they did it with the right product at the right time, it made our decision easier. And we frequently paid more for a better product or service because we got so much more value and we were thrilled to do so. It's concepts like these that we include throughout the OSR Academy to develop salespeople that do not annoy the hell out of people who build America. These are the salespeople that I wished I got to engage with more when I was in a buying capacity. Registration is open. It closes this Friday at 5 p.m. Central. So if you're interested, check out osracademy.com. And if you'd like to connect with us and ask questions on a live call, feel free to simply email info@bradleyhartmanandco.com. And when you do, ask for the PDF. We'll get it right back to you. That's all I've got, friends. We will close out with our leadership mantra. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first. Make it a great week.